I think the first step overall is really just to know your surroundings. Part of that is accepting the environmental changes that are happening around us. And by that, I don't mean climate change specifically. I just mean natural environmental change. The environment is a dynamic thing, it changes constantly. And we as humans have to change and adapt our behaviors in response. This photo, I think, is a really good representation of this idea. This is Long Beach Island, the Holgate Spit looking north. Down here we have the town of Holgate and Beach Haven behind it. And what I want you to notice is how the built part of the island is over here, and this unbuilt part of the island seems to have shifted back toward the mainland over here. That's a natural process. Barrier islands move as when storms come, the water washes up and over, pushes sand across the island. And so over time, the island itself actually moves backwards towards the mainland. In places where we've developed, that's obviously a threat to development, and we've made the decision to kind of hold the line with beach renourishment and bulkheads that make it so that the island stays fixed in place. I'm not saying that this is right or wrong. I'm just saying that we've made a decision to recognize the change that's happening. It's something that we accept as a reality, and we take actions to live with the natural forces. So it's really about recognizing that the impacts of coastal hazards are happening now and not at some time in the distant future, which I think we have a tendency to do when we think about climate change. Recognizing that these changing conditions are happening, it gives us, I think, the tendency to look back, and that's human nature. A lot of times in New Jersey, we think back to Sandy when we think about flooding impacts. But in the case of sea level rise specifically, we have to look towards the future because it's something that's changing and the rate is increasing as time goes on. Fortunately, in New Jersey, we have really great science that can inform decision-making around sea level rise. Rutgers has issued reports. The first one was in 2016, and then they updated it in 2019. And the report makes the science accessible for people to actually understand and use, which is important because when we think about sea level rise, we need to understand what the numbers mean in order to be able to apply them in decision-making. This is a table from the report, and I promise this is the only table I have in this presentation. I'm not a table person, but this is an important table. So this shows sea level rise projections based on New Jersey out until 2150. And so your year is along the top, and the likelihood of that much sea level rise is over along the rows. And so you can go out to a year, for example, 2050, come down the column, we're in the likely range here. And what we can see is that there's about a 50% chance that sea level rise will meet or exceed 1.4 feet by 2050. And then you can look at the chart for other years and come to similar conclusions. Charts are nice, but we need to understand what 1.4 feet means on the ground, right? And for that, my reserve, in partnership with Rutgers, have created a tool called New Jersey Flood Mapper. If you go to the website down here on the bottom, this is the map page that you'll start with. I'm going to use some screenshots just to give you an idea of how you can use the tool to assess your flood risk. So the first thing you can do is zoom into your area of interest by typing it in this little search area. I typed in Loveladies and it zoomed me in kind of to the center of town here. The next thing I like to do is change the map to aerial imagery so I can actually see what I'm looking at. And so to do that, you go over here to where it says base maps, and you can pick from all different types of maps, and I chose imagery hybrid. So now I have a nice picture of what it looks like on the ground, and I'm ready to start looking at my different flood hazards. To do that, I click on flood hazards over here on the left, and it gives me a whole bunch of different options to choose. I don't have time to go through all of them right now. You can see you can go and put on your FEMA flood, storm surge, inundation there would be at different levels of hurricane. That's why it says Cat 1 through Cat 4. So I'm going to add the Cat 1 to the map. I can click on legend over here and it gives me my legend to show me what these colors mean. And what I see is that there could be about up to 3 feet of inundation with a Category 1 hurricane. Now, but it starts to give us an idea of where there are vulnerable areas for hurricane storm surge. I'm going to clear the map and I'm going to now look at sea level rise. And then this tool allows me to set sea level rise to anything I want from 0 to 10 feet. Since we looked at the predicted 50% chance of 1.4 feet by 2050 on the chart, I'm going to set sea level rise to 2 feet and see what that could look like. So now we're looking at 2 feet of sea level rise. This model is based on elevation. So in areas where the ground is higher, you're not going to see inundation from sea level rise. And so most of the ground around here is over 2 feet above sea level right now. And so that's why it would remain dry. Even if your house is dry, it doesn't mean flooding isn't going to affect you. You have to consider things like, can I get to the grocery store? Can emergency services get to me if I need help? And of course, can I get over the bridge if I need to evacuate? These layers can give you a better idea of what the actual impact flooding can have on your community as a whole. Now I've moved down to look at the causeway onto the island. Here's ship bottom. This way I can assess, can I get over the bridge? It comes down to that question on LBI. There's only one way on and off. If you can't get over the bridge, you might have a problem. To get an idea of the kind of thing you'd be looking for as a trouble spot, I'm going to bump the sea level rise up to 3 feet. And now what you see is pretty significant inundation in these roads around the bridge. And that can be a dangerous thing if you need to get off the island. And it's important to think, even though this is showing sea level rise, what it's really just showing is 3 feet of water on top of the existing water level. So that could be 3 feet of storm surge too. It's basically just 3 feet higher than what would be your normal high tide. And with that, I'm going to move on to the next thing to know, which is your tides. Avoiding flood damage can really be as simple as knowing when the high tide is and staying off the road or moving your car to higher ground when a high tide is coming. A great source for tide information is NOAA. They have a network of tide stations all over the coast. You see the ones in our area here on this map. And if you go to this website, you can get tide times and heights for your nearest station. So this is a screenshot of the website. You can see for Barnegat Bay, they have a bunch of different stations. What I like to use is the Stevens Flood Advisory System. This is a website operated by Stevens Institute of Technology. And basically all you have to do is put in your email, choose your nearest tide station or 2 stations or 3, however many you want, and you'll get an email when there's predicted to be flooding at that station. Here, this is the map showing where the tide gauges you can pick. They just have the actual harmonic ones. Those are the ones that are in existence, and they're also collecting meteorological data, so they're better for making predictions like this. And so we have this one. This is the one at Barnegat Inlet, and there's also one in Ship Bottom at the bridge. End up getting an alert for Ship Bottom. This is an example of the email I got last week on the 28th. So I was getting it warning me that 4 days out, there could be flooding at my nearest station. And so there was, right? This was predicting the fact that there was a nor'easter coming. It also was around the time of the high tide. And so we had very, very high tides and some significant flooding. And so this is great because now 4 days in advance, I know to get ready, to start to think about it. It's not a reason to panic, of course, but now I can take the actions I need to know about this.
That Stevens Flood Mapper is phenomenal. It's really great. And what I suggest people do is take a picture of the flooding in your neighborhood on a day like last week, and then hang on to that picture. What you can do is you can go out to that Stevens website and put in any date going backward, and you can see what the graph that they show you relative to high water is. Now you can equate a picture of flooding in your street to a point on the chart that they provide. And then you can really have a very good idea of what are things liable to look like going forward. So that's a very, very useful tool. Thank you.